today. My name is Amanda Ramirez. I am the program manager here at the Children's Bereavement Center. I am also a licensed mental health professional. And today I will be sharing with you all some information about the grief process and how can we use mindfulness as a powerful tool in our healing journey. Today, we also have Dorlie Banbanaste from Mindful Kids Miami. She began her journey with Mindful Kids Miami in 2015 when she attended her first mindfulness training, the Mindfulness-Stress Reduction program. And she immediately knew that mindfulness would be an essential part of her life and work. At that time, she was working with children, teenagers, and adults as a mental health therapist and witnessed the therapeutic benefits that combining mindfulness and therapy would do. In the past 8 years, Dorlie has grown to become a principal member at the organization as the program director and lead mindfulness trainer. She also created the MBSR modified program, the compassionate choice, emphasizing in trauma-sensitive practice for staff members who work with vulnerable populations. She also holds a degree in music theory and performance and a master's degree in mental health counseling. She values being an agent of support and advocacy for research-based well-being and healing practices. Dorlie will be sharing with us more information about the practice of mindfulness in the second half of the presentation. Thank you for being with us, Dorlie.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, I would love to share with you all some information about CBC for those that don't know who we are. The Children's Bereavement Center and Live from Loss is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1999. Our team includes national grief experts, thanatologists, and mental health professionals. Our Live from Loss division provides support to young adults and adults. We service Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, but because our services are virtual, we service nationwide. It does not matter where you reside. We also offer free resources that are available in our website at childbereavement.org. And I will encourage you all to check it out for grief-related articles and videos. CBC has very important beliefs regarding grief that are incorporated in the services that we provide to the community. First, grief is a natural, healthy reaction to loss. The complex emotions that come after the loss of a loved one can be surprising, but they are not abnormal. With support, each person has the capacity to heal as they process their loss. The intensity, duration, and the expression of grief is unique to each person. Everyone experiences and processes their loss in their own way. Remember, there is no right way to grieve. Our support groups really encourage the concept of continuing bonds. Even though the person is gone and is no longer here with us, the lived experiences remain. We want to help you maintain a relationship with your loved one, even though they have passed away. Children, teenagers, and adults benefit from sharing their grief experiences with others that are also going through the grieving process. This really builds a sense of community and support that really helps process their healing in a healthy way. And then lastly, grief is transformative. We encourage our participants in group to really explore what the loss means for them. They may be surprised to find some positive aspects from it. So what is grief? Grief is a natural response to loss. It is at times the anguish experience after a significant loss. Grief often includes psychological distress, physiological distress, separation anxiety at times, confusion, yearning, obsessive thinking of the past, and apprehension about what's coming, about the future. Grief is also expressed in many ways, affecting every part of our life. Grieving the loss of a loved one is an ongoing process. Everyone grieves differently, although others may have opinions, right, about how to grieve correctly. Our grief is ours and ours alone. Some people may need to express their grief, while others may prefer to process in silence. Some people may feel anger, others may feel sadness, numbness, or even relief. Everyone has different reactions to loss and different needs during the grieving process. Remember, there is no timeline for grief. Grief does not have a set time frame. Grief can last for weeks, months, or even years. It may come, it may go. It may come and go around anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, and major life events. Or it might always be in the background. However, grief does tend to lessen in intensity over time. Grief is also an instinctually programmed response to loss and is adaptive as a process for children, for teenagers, and for adults. The dual process model does a really great job in explaining the ebbs and flows of grief because it involves that gradual lessening of that distress that may come with grief, that may associate with that loss. Remember, it's normal to experience the waves of grief at various points of our life indefinitely. While grief has no true endpoint, remember that there are periods of relief and returning back to life. When we talk about grief and the process of grieving, it does not mean being sad all the time. Grief hurts, yes, but it can be helpful. The process of grieving often involves different emotions: sadness, anger, loneliness, any other painful emotions. However, grieving can help you come to terms with loss and move forward in life while still cherishing beautiful memories of your loved one. So when we talk about grief, how does grief impact us, right? Impacts our body and mind. We need to take into consideration the importance of the awareness of the connection between our mind and body as we process grief. Remember, as I shared earlier, grief can affect different aspects of our life, including physical, social, psychological, biological, and even spiritual. Research tells us that grief can have powerful effects on the body. As an example, emotional stress. It can activate the nervous system as easily as physical threats can. So when stress becomes chronic, increased adrenaline and blood pressure can affect us and contribute to chronic medical conditions. So that's important to take that in mind. Emphasis on supporting our overall wellness when we are grieving. For example, sometimes when we're grieving, our heart can feel heavy. It can often cause physical symptoms that can be mistaken for an illness. Sometimes a racing mind can lead to not being able to sleep, sleepless nights, aiding in the physical exhaustion, being tired that grief often presents. I think it's very important for us to educate ourselves and others in this mind and body connection in order to support our well-being. So what can we do, right? What can we do to maintain our health? We can think about periods of rest, the importance of relaxation, at times leaning into what feels good, right? And instead of creating this must-do list that I have to do. Another thing to keep in mind too is just being proactive and practicing mindfulness. The importance of trying to not let stress, anxiety, and negative thinking set in and take power over you. Now, when we talk about grief, when we talk about mindfulness, we also need to think about self-care and the big picture, right? So what is self-care and what does it have to do with grief? The act of taking an active and proactive role to care for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. It really is a framework for managing emotional and practical challenges that you may be facing that come with grief and loss. But it's also an empowerment process, right? That creates this balance across different aspects of your life after that loss. Self-care is any deliberate activity, choice, or action that really takes care of your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And why is it important? Self-care is very crucial as being part of our healing process when we're grieving. It really can help us ease the suffering of the mind, the body, and the spirit. Remember that it also looks unique to each person. It also allows us to take as much time as we need and seek and accept support from those that are close to us. It also allows us to nurture ourselves and help us develop self-compassion. Another important thing to keep in mind is also thinking about a self-care routine, right? Something that's going to provide us benefits in our grief journey. Why is self-care important? What are those benefits of us practicing self-care and prioritizing it? Well, first, it can increase acceptance and enjoyment of our life. It can help us build some routine in our day-to-day. It can help us better cope with grief, loss, and even secondary losses too. It can help us to maintain positive connections with ourselves and others. It can also help us support others who are also going through grief and loss. And lastly, it can also lower our risk of mental health disorders. Now, I would love to hear from you all because we talk a lot about self-care and we know it's important. But I know that it can be hard for us. So I would love to hear, feel free to mute yourself or type in the chat. What makes self-care challenging for you? Making time for self-care is challenging and not feeling guilty for taking the time. Yes. For me, at time, it's just taking the time, right? And looking for the time and being proactive on finding the time to take care of myself. Yeah. Making the time for it. I have to schedule it. If not, it doesn't happen. I agree. Feeling to be busy, overwhelmed. Feeling bad that the person deceased is unable to do it. That guilt that may come. Allowing yourself to see you are important as well. Yeah. Very little time to do it. When you are a caregiver, also, sometimes you forget your importance. Definitely. We need to take care of so many things that in our list, we may be the last number or the last priority. Realizing self-care could be even 5 to 10 minutes and does not need to be a bubble bath. I love that one. Yeah, it could be anything. It could be something you can do on your way to work or when you wake up, right? It could be something short. It doesn't have to be anything expensive that cost or 20 minutes. Trying to balance everything else, and it seems like that just get dropped on the to-do list. And then we forget about that because we have other things to think about. And we just don't prioritize it. Definitely. Thank you all for sharing. Just like you all shared, there are so many factors that really make self-care challenging. For most of us, it's really not that simple or easy to just fit into our days. So why is it, right? That even that we know that it's important and key to take care of ourselves, we cannot find the time or even the energy to do it. Why do we so often have trouble not just taking care of ourselves, but also being kind to ourselves, finding that self-compassion? First, we may have strong emotions that come with it. We talked about the guilt. We may not want to even feel those emotions, so we kind of like ignore those emotions. We don't have time for that right now. The judgment, the shame that may come for putting ourselves first after we have encountered a loss. There's also myth about self-care, like what we have here, for example, being self-indulgent. Self-care means feeling sorry for myself, means that I'm selfish, weak, doing anything that suits you, right? And really self-care means that you are creating conditions that allow you to integrate the death of someone you love into your heart and soul, into your day to day. I think it's very important for us to remember that self-care, yes, is something that you enjoy doing, but we do not want to overindulge. We don't want to do excess, right? So overindulging in food, watching excessive amounts of TV, or drinking alcohol or using excessive drugs, those are the opposites of self-care. So we want to make sure that self-care is supporting ourselves, but it's also promoting our health and wellness and should not be addictive or harmful to our body. There's also different aspects of self-care. We can dive into the physical, the psychological, the emotional. the spiritual, the relationship, and even the workplace or professional aspect of self-care. And we can try and seek balance in all of these areas of our life. For example, if we want to focus on the emotional self-care, grievers often experience sad thoughts and feelings. And again, they may come in waves or burst of grief, followed by periods of respite. So it can really be challenging to engage in that emotional self-care. So ways that grievers can support their emotional health is first by being kind to themselves. Allow themselves to really feel all these emotions as they come and go. Encourage the griever to focus on the present moment, to become aware of what's going on inside of them, around them, what thoughts are coming, feelings, sensations, and even their environment. To observe the moments without judgment. This is what we call mindfulness too. Another example, when we talk about physical self-care, right? When we're grieving, we may have difficulty getting a healthy sleep routine, falling asleep, or even staying asleep, or even having healthy eating habits. Trying to get a healthy sleep routine, trying to maintain basic health practices as much as possible. And that includes having proper sleep, nutrition, taking our vitamins, and things are going to nourish our body. The other one that I want to point out too is the relationship aspect of self-care. Who do we have around us? That could be colleagues, friends, family. Remember that you can say no as needed. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries for yourself as you grieve. Also showing your vulnerability to others. Trying to find and maintain social support and connections as much as we can during our grief process. Even trying some mindfulness exercise with a friend, a family member, or even a peer. Remember, mindfulness exercise have been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. And there's also evidence that mindfulness can lower blood pressure and improve sleep. It may even help people cope with the pain that come with grief. I also want to share with you all some strategies to use in our self-care. These are things that you may be already doing, things that you haven't tried before, things that maybe you have tried, but they don't work for you, and that's okay. These are all things that you can add to your day-to-day. Things are going to help you connect with your spirit, like relaxation and mindfulness. Things are going to help activate your mind, such as listening to music, reading a good book, and self-care ideas that help you connect with your body, such as eating well or even drinking enough water. I'm eager to learn what mindfulness ideas will be shared with us later in the presentation. And something that I want to touch base with you all is, what does research say about mindfulness? Because I think it's important for us to remember that research continues to show the benefits of practicing mindfulness. There was a study in 2018 that involved an 8-week mindfulness-based intervention in grieving individuals. And that showed significant improvements both in executive control and emotional regulation. Another 2020 study found that mindfulness as a trait predicted higher rates of post-traumatic growth in individuals who have had a traumatic loss. Remember, self-compassion is key to allow ourselves to feel whatever it is that's coming at any given time, without judgment, without comparing ourselves to others that are also grieving. In this way, to grieve is to be mindful of our thoughts and feelings. Grief is not by any means a one-size-fits-all kind of process. In fact, it is a uniquely individual process that at times it may even be difficult to describe with words. Remember that there is no right way to grieve. To grieve is essential for our ability to just continue with our life and to find a new sense of meaning. Grief elicits resilience, the capacity to continue to hold a loved one in our hearts, in our mind, while still moving forward with purpose and direction. And mindfulness can help us grieve in a healthy manner. Before I pass it over to Dorlie, I want to share quickly information about our grief support groups in case you do not have that information. Our grief support groups are offered to everyone, ages 4 and up, and they are free to everyone. It's open to anyone who has lost a loved one as a result of illness, accident, suicide, or homicide. We have groups for children, teenagers, and adults that happen weekly on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays on Zoom. We have an elementary group, a middle school group, and a high school group. We have a young adult group, groups for adults in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. We also have dedicated grief support groups for those that have lost a child at any age in both English and Spanish. And we also have a perinatal and infant loss group in English and Spanish. We love to incorporate art and music in our groups. And we also have candle lighting ceremonies 3 times a year. And lastly, I would love to share with you all on how to join a group. We don't need a referral. Anyone that would like to join a grief support group can self-enroll when they're ready. You can just call our 888 number or our support@childbereavement.org email. Our intake staff will connect with you, and then you can start that group right away. Any questions, comments that you may have before we hear Dorlie? Awesome. Dorlie, I'm going to pass it over to you and stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was really helpful for me. All right, everyone. So my intention is to introduce, and Amanda introduced mindfulness wonderfully. I'm going to introduce mindfulness also, maybe go a little deeper, and then provide you with several brief practices so you can experience mindfulness, which is really what it is. It's experiential, not just logical. And then get some understanding of how becoming more present with grief can be helpful and healing. Please at any time feel free to, I'm happy with unmuting, asking a question, raising a digital hand, or using the chat. So again, my name is Dorlie. I work with Mindful Kids Miami, and the name is a little misleading because what we mostly do is work with adults who serve children. Yes, we have programs for kids and teens, but our passion is mostly to work with adults who are serving children, either in a community organization, environment, education, healthcare. So let's begin. What is mindfulness? The word has become really popular in the past, I'd say, 2 decades. Before that, probably not many people had heard of it. So I'll go through this little bit by bit. One definition is mindfulness is the awareness. It's awareness. Mindfulness is awareness. It arises when we pay attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. That's a lot of stuff going on there. So let's start with paying attention. If you'd like, take a moment to reflect on yourself and how good are you at paying attention throughout the entire day? So we're all really good at paying attention sometimes, right? Most of us all of us are really great paying attention when we're really interested in something, when something is important. But what about all the other times? What if you're in class and it gets boring? What if you're driving and there's traffic? So just considering, how often am I completely present with my attention? So maybe you're thinking a number in your head, maybe that's 50% of the time. Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 70. So we're all different. Paying attention on purpose is what we're talking about. In the present moment, there's no other moment. And lastly, non-judgmentally. This is a really big part of mindfulness. If you'd like, take a moment to think about something that is a synonym to non-judgment. So if you say something like, I really like to have a partner in my life or a friend that is non-judgmental, what does that mean? What does non-judgmental mean? And feel free to chat. What are some synonyms of that? Gracious. Thank you, Ashley. Compassionate. Thank you. And as you continue, I'll go into that a little more. Judgment gets a bad rap. We don't want to be considered judgmental, yet judging is a very human and important thing that we need to do. We do need to judge at times when something is safe or unsafe, if it's healthy or not healthy. So we need to judge. The problem is our minds tend to judge very often and with very little information. So we make split-second judgments and sometimes assumptions about things that we don't really know that much about. So in mindfulness, we practice paying attention and kind of, okay, the judgment comes up, but we're going to look at this again with an open mind, with empathy. I love the ways that you guys are sharing these words. With openness, listening, with compassion. We'll go into that more as we go. So mindfulness has two wings. One side is the paying attention on purpose. That's right here, the prefrontal cortex. That's right here behind the forehead, that part of the brain. But there's another really big part, and that's the heart. That's where compassion comes in, or that non-judgment. We're paying attention with the sense of care, kindness, friendliness, if you'd like, even love. So a small reflection here is I'm going to invite you, if you choose, to take a moment to bring the image of a loved one to mind. And this can be someone you really like, and you think about them, you smile. Might be a mentor, might be your pet. So just bring them to mind. And they've just had some issue, some major issue. They're upset. Either they're sad or whatever it is, but they're sitting next to you. So take a moment to think about how your heart would respond to that person or pet if they're having a difficult time, this loved one. What are the types of emotions you're feeling on behalf of this person? Bring to mind some of the thoughts that you would have in that moment with this person sitting next to you. You might even say some of these thoughts. Some of the stuff I've heard is, I'm here for you, or I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Bring to mind body language. How would your body be feeling sitting next to this person? Are you leaning in? Is there physical contact? Are you leaning away? There's no right or wrong here. So we're just becoming aware, because that's what mindfulness is. Okay, now imagine that person's problem is fixed. They're fine. Now bring yourself to mind when you've had some type of issue or something you feel you have caused. Maybe you made a mistake or you didn't pass a test. Bring to mind how you feel emotionally about yourself. How do you talk to yourself in your mind? What are the sensations of the body in those moments? Are you loose and open? Are you tight? Tense? And now my question is, Take a moment to compare how you relate to a loved one who's challenged and how you relate to yourself when you're feeling challenged or you're going through something rough. What we mostly find is that we tend to be very compassionate to our loved ones, but not so much to ourselves. That's not everyone, but many of us find it difficult, as Amanda said earlier, to be compassionate to ourselves. So that is that second wing of the mindfulness bird, is practicing attention with compassion. Because sometimes practicing mindfulness is not easy. It can be simple. There's only a couple instructions, but it's not so easy. So we give ourselves that patience, that love, that compassion that we would give to a loved one. And we'll practice that a little bit more as we go. Yes, yes, one is harder on themselves than others, genuinely. Yes. So because mindfulness has become so popular, and Amanda brought up some of the research, but there have been research studies on mindfulness since the 80s. In the 80s, there was one. And then in the past couple of years, there's been about 1,000 research studies that go into journals about mindfulness. So there's a lot of research, but it needs to continue. With the popularity comes misconceptions, right? You hear about it, but you don't really know what it is. So many people think that when we practice mindfulness, we're going to make our mind blank. So I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand and admit, yeah, that's why I've stayed away. I have to clear my thoughts. Oh, yeah, I hear it all the time. I have to clear my thoughts. I hear it on all these practices out there. That is a misconception. You are not clearing your mind or your thoughts. If that was easy to do, then we wouldn't need to be on medication. We wouldn't need to experience discomfort because you could just clear it away. Not an easy thing to do, clearing the mind or blanking the mind. What we are doing is we're paying attention to what is going on in our mind. So I'm going to invite you now to just simply notice your mind. What you might be noticing is, I have no idea what this is, or this is weird. Maybe your mind is blank. Maybe you just noticed, oh man, I've just been wandering, daydreaming. So whatever you noticed, whether it's humor or judgment or the to-do list, that's okay because we're practicing awareness. Okay, so we're not trying to fight the thoughts that come in. We're just noticing them. Next, a big misconception of mindfulness is that it is religious or that it is part of a belief system. So this is really important because we mostly work with schools in the Dade County public school system. So mindfulness helps us to become more present with what is important to our lives. It helps us to become more present with our experience. It's not about believing anything in particular or doing things really any differently. We're becoming familiar and more intimate with ourselves. It can help us to become closer to whatever it is that's important. When we practice mindfulness in relationships, our relationships become stronger. When we practice mindfulness during prayer and with our faith can feel more connected. So it is something that can enhance your life, but not change what you believe. It actually helps us to become more determined in what we find important in our life. Next, if we practice mindfulness, we're going to become a certain type of person, like really laid back. Whenever I have classes with teens and I say mindfulness, they kind of sit back and they have peace signs and they're going, so those are some stereotypes. Yeah, we've seen that around. Yet it just helps us again to become more of who we are. So I invite you now to just check in with your body. Notice how your body is feeling right now. Maybe it is feeling relaxed and laid back. Maybe there's some parts that are comfortable, maybe other parts that are agitated or sore or tense. However your body is feeling, we're just allowing that. We're not trying to change it to become relaxed or more laid back. We're just noticing what's here. And here I'll share a little tidbit from, if anyone heard of Oh no, now I'm having like a brain blank. Okay. There was a past, it's going to come to me in a moment, but there was a past, I believe it was ABC journalist. If anyone knows his name, please feel free to share. And while he was doing the news on television, he had a panic attack. This was humiliating. So, of course, he never wanted to have a panic attack again. So he started to desperately look at all these ways to avoid that from happening in his life because he's a very competitive journalist. He tried all kinds of stuff from illegal stuff to like therapy to many things. He said, mindfulness, no, that's not for me. That's for people who wear crystals and burn incense and play ultimate frisbee and say namaste non-ironically, right? So there's that stereotype. This is this kind of person. Well, what do you think happened? So he ends up, I believe it's Dan Harris. He ends up in desperation practicing mindfulness, and he has a book called 10% Happier, The Skeptic's Guide to Mindfulness. Did it change him into like this laid back, hippie or whatever it is? No, he's still a very competitive, driven person. So doesn't really change us, but it helps us to enhance what we'd like to strengthen in our lives. I wonder if anyone has any questions or any other misconceptions you want to bring up, please feel free. I'd like to invite you all to grab something that's nearby, whether it's a mug or a pen or a paper. So just grab something. You probably have something nearby, a book, whatever it is. Notice I didn't say phone. You can grab that, but we grab it so often, so I kind of leave that off the list. We're always grabbing the phone. Okay. We're going to practice one of the 9 attitudinal qualities of mindfulness. It's called beginner's mind. So I invite you all if you'd like. Okay, wonderful. I see some stuff in your hands. Imagine, this takes a little creativity. Imagine that what you're holding in your hand, you have just come across and you have never seen it before. You have no idea what this is. Obviously, you know what it is in real life, but we're just playing right now. So we're going to investigate this item as if we've never seen it before, AKA beginner's mind, fresh mind. Okay. Beginning by noticing what you can see. So looking at the item, just using the eyes right now and noticing what you're taking in through your eyes. Feel free to chat if you'd like to about what you're noticing with your eyes. Remember, it's the first time you're experiencing this item. And perhaps you're noticing color, shape. Maybe there's size, color, texture. Thank you. When your mind drifts off, you have thoughts, whatever kind of thoughts they are, doesn't really matter. Bring your attention back to what you're seeing as if right now is the first time you're seeing it. So you're looking at it again with fresh eyes. Okay, depth, see small dots. Now we're moving to the ears. So if you have an item, you might tap it, maybe you shake it. Noticing thoughts that come up, I feel silly or whatever it is, that's fine. Notice the thoughts, they're there. Bring it back to what you can hear. Is there any sound? Maybe there's a dull sound, loud, quiet. Maybe there's no sound. That's okay. Okay, we got clanking, kind of an empty sound. There might be no sound. Just notice that experience of blankness. Moving to the nose. If you choose to, and I don't feel forced to do anything you don't want to do, but smelling the object, bringing in the aroma of the object. Noticing what you can smell. Are there any scents? Is there sweetness? Earthiness. You may not even have the word for it. That's okay. But just noticing what you're taking in through aroma. And is anything happening? Maybe memories, mind wandering. Bring attention back. We're noticing through smell, learning about the object. And lastly, smells sweet. Lastly, noticing touch. So feeling the object. If you'd like, you can close the eyes or keep them open. What do you feel as you're holding this object. Okay, noticing temperature. You might notice weight. You may notice texture. Is it smooth? Is it rigid? Is it heavy? Is it light? Okay. Now, because this is a lunch and learn, some of you may be examining food. If it's food, you can go ahead and take a bite. If it's not food, then you stop right there. I actually had a participant bite their phone once. Okay, but we're not doing that. All right. So we're done examining this object. Hope we've learned a lot about it probably. What was this experience like for you? Now, this question is just to help you identify your experience, whatever it is. It could be small. It could be, I was falling asleep or whatever it is. I noticed this sound. What was the experience like for you? Okay, we have the word curiosity. We were definitely exercising those muscles. Different, yeah. Present. In our mindfulness program, we will do this with food. And then we usually ask, is this different from how you normally eat? And for most of us, yeah, it's pretty different. Usually we're multitasking. This is about just paying attention to this one object. So thank you, thank you. I'll read this quote. It's a Zen saying. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So just notice how that hits you. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. I chose this picture because this reminds me of my daughter. When she was about 1 and 2, toddlers are so present and mindful. They don't automatically smush the bug or scream and run away. They tend to investigate. They're excited and enthusiastic about what the bug looks like, how many legs it has, how it moves. If a young person, a toddler sees a box, they might be able to come up with 5 different uses for that box. It could be a hat. It could be, many things. If it's big enough, a boat, a house. As an adult, we might just see it as something that needs to be recycled. So that is that openness that we're practicing as we approach whatever it is we're focusing on. Your breath, your pen, your best friend when they're talking to you. When we practice mindfulness, there are many benefits that have come out over the past 40 years. Mentally, it helps us, of course, to be more focused, all the executive functioning, focused, attentive. It helps us to have clarity, problem solving, creativity. Physically, as Amanda said, it lowers your blood pressure, heart rate, your breath rate. It actually increases immune system. Not sure if anyone ever notices, if you have a really stressful week, you maybe have a little bit of a throat thing or a stressful month, you might get sick. This is the opposite. It really strengthens our immune system so that we get sick less often and for less intensity. Emotionally, the program that most science is based on is the mindfulness-based stress reduction. That's the 8-week Amanda was referring to. It's stress reduction. So we're reducing stress, depression, anxiety. We're reducing rumination. That's the thoughts that keep coming back. And we're learning how to work with difficult emotions more healthfully. And lastly, socially. During COVID, there was so much feeling of isolation and loneliness. A lot of people are still dealing with it. It's like an epidemic in itself. Mindfulness helps us to feel more connected with other people, with ourselves, helps us to befriend ourselves. It helps us to notice bias and to work with it so that we are more feeling of a we rather than an us versus them. Okay. So I'm going to pause here. There's so much wonderful overlap with what I've learned grieving mindfully and what Amanda has shared. So it's wonderful. We have a lot, of that's interwoven. Personally, growing up, one of my biggest fear, I won't say one of, my biggest fear would keep me up at night is that I would lose my mom, that my mom would pass. That was my biggest fear. Well, it's going to happen one day, right? So she unexpectedly passed a couple years ago. And although my father had already passed 2 years before that, the unexpectedness of her passing, and she was my best friend and like my favorite person on the entire planet, it was really, really rough. So I turned to mindfulness. I had mindfulness in my life already, but I really I was like, okay, what's going to help me here? Not to get over it, but to work with it so that I can grieve in a healthy way, because this was like my biggest fear, come to life. So mindfulness was actually really helpful. I'm so grateful that I'm doing this, and I teach it because I continue to need it. So as Amanda said, there's no right way to experience loss. And in our country, in the United States, we tend to not really talk about it as much as some other cultures. And we tend to want people to get through it very quickly because it's uncomfortable sometimes. You may notice other people just want you to feel better because they care about you and because of their own discomfort. But that's not always, so helpful. So there's no one right way. As Amanda said, it's okay to be sad. You feel grief because you loved. If you love someone, grief is going to be there. Even if you didn't get along, grief is going to be there. So as Amanda Slide said, that it's completely normal and natural. There is nothing wrong with it. So when we are feeling challenged, it is helpful to practice self-compassion and reach out. So I'm going to go through that quickly because she's already gone through that. One practice we can try out during difficult times and at any other regular, boring, or happy, part of the day. I'm going to walk you through it, and I invite you to practice it if you choose to. And if you'd like, with mindfulness practice, we know that you don't have to close your eyes and sit still. That's a misconception too. But if you want to, please feel free. If you'd like, also keeping the eyes open and just gazing at a point with soft gaze. Step one, we're just going to pause and notice whatever we're experiencing right now. Now, remember, this is a choice, and never to force yourself if you don't want to go deeper into your present moment experience. But if right now you're feeling okay, take a moment to notice what type of thoughts are on your mind. What's the tone of your mind? However it is it agitated? Is it sleepy? Is it hopeful? There is no right or wrong here. We are just bringing awareness. We're noticing and allowing. This is such an act of love towards ourselves. We're allowing our mind to be just as it is, even if it's scattered or negative. We're allowing, saying, okay, that's what's here right now. Your mind's going to wander off to other things like the noises around you or other thoughts. Bring your attention back to yourself. This is quality time with yourself. How am I feeling right now? How does my body feel? Next step, we're going to focus in all of the focus. We're going to narrow it down and place it anywhere on the body that you can feel you're breathing the most. Where do you feel your breath the most? Is it the nostrils? Is it the chest? Is it the belly? For some people, it's helpful to place a hand on the chest or a hand on the belly. It helps to feel it more. So if you'd like, you could try that out. But focusing all the attention into one spot where you can feel your breath the most. And now we're just noticing the sensations of breathing. Your breath just as it is. You don't need to control it or change it. Allowing the body to breathe just as it is, whether the breath is short or long, shallow or deep. Noticing the inhalation and the exhalation. as best you can. Now your mind will get distracted because that's what the mind does. Bring it right back, noticing this breath. Lastly, step 3, you're going to expand the attention from the breath, widening and widening until it includes the entire body as best you can. So it's like if your attention was like a bubble around the breath, now it's a bubble around the whole body. And just noticing the sensations of this body sitting right here, right now. If you'd like, you can imagine the entire surface of the body is breathing in and breathing out. Or just feeling your body as it is. Is it tired? Is it energized? We're coming to the end of this practice. It's called the 3-minute breathing space. This is a great place to start for beginners. And you can actually do it in 30 seconds if you want to, but most people do it for 3 minutes. So I want to take a moment and check in and ask, what was that like for you? Because that's different than noticing the object. Now it's ourselves, which may not be as easy to allow or accept. So if anyone wants to share anything, please feel free. Okay, yeah, feels good. I don't do it enough. Like a release, relaxing, weird, but it was calming after. Thank you. Yeah, and your name passed so quickly, but I think it was Sahari. If anyone else like Sahari felt like that was weird or strange, yeah, that's weird. How often do we just pause and pay attention to our body and our breath and then our body again? So yes, it's different. It's new. It might be strange. So if you felt that way, that's okay. If it was difficult or if there was resistance, that's okay. So hopefully you're kind of getting that theme of however your experience was, we're allowing it. That's part of compassion for ourselves. This is just how it was for me. That's okay. Thank you. You caught your thoughts wandering from time to time. Wonderful. I'm going to assume that everyone probably had their mind wander. Earlier, I asked you to think about how often are you completely attentive throughout the day? 50%, 60? There was a Harvard study done a few years ago. Go ahead and stop this for a second. It was the biggest study ever done. 1,200 people throughout the US and the UK. They all had a phone. When Harvard contacted them, they had to pause everything they were doing and answer the text message, no matter what they were doing other than sleeping or maybe driving, because that could be dangerous. Question number 1, what are you doing? They write that down. Question number 2, how present are you with what you're doing right now? So that's where people wrote, okay, I'm 50% present with my homework, or I was whatever it is, 20% present at the stoplight. Question 3, how happy are you? So we might be thinking, what's the correlation here, of how present you are, how happy are you? So first of all, does anyone want to guess how present people were throughout the day doing anything from driving to being at Disney World, to being at work, to being with friends, to whatever, cooking? How present would you assume people generally are? 10%, 40%? Okay, cool. Before mindfulness, I also ADHD. I probably was like 30 or 20. Okay. 40, 40, 50. Yes. Very good. Okay. So about 47% of the time, these people shared that they were present. Now this is, some are higher, some are lower. And then some people, it's self-reporting. So you always have some issues there. So thank you, everyone. About 47% of the time, these people are present in their lives when they're with their family, when they're doing homework, whatever it is throughout. Now, why is that a problem? Is mind wandering, bad? No, it's not. Mind wandering is healthy. The problem is we tend to do it very often. Anyone have the experience? You're driving home and you realize, oh my gosh, I wasn't even paying attention the past 2 miles, right? What we call that automatic pilot. You're not even You're going through stop signs and you have no idea. Your brain is, your attention is completely somewhere else. So we do that a lot. We do that a lot. So about half of our day, about half of our lives, we are missing out on by not being present. The main thing here is the more our mind wanders, the less happy we are. The more distracted we are, the less happy we are. No wonder ADHD diagnosis, or now we're just ADD diagnosis. Now anxiety and depression is not far from a lot of people who have an ADD, attention deficit. So the more we pay attention to our experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, the more well-being we experience. I can't tell you exactly why. It's some brain chemistry there. This also includes paying attention to experiences of grief. My father had Parkinson's for 25 years. I was a daddy's girl when I was a little kid. So I was one of his caregivers, and it was really difficult watching him decline. And I just kept thinking of what's going to happen, what's going to happen. And what I was fearing would happen eventually happened. He was bedridden for years, and that was really rough. Yet I will say, I am so thankful for mindfulness for that, because instead of being caught up in, oh my gosh, he's going to die, or oh my gosh, I was there with him. We were there playing Family Feud. I was there singing to him. I was there with him. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was sad. And he eventually passed. Yet I had those moments. I wasn't somewhere else. And that's really precious to me. So we might think, why do I want to be present even in difficult situations? Well, the more we practice that presence, the situations become a little less difficult. So there's a quote, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. The more we practice these skills, the stronger our executive functioning in other areas of the brain become, and we're able to navigate those really rough waters of grief when they come blasting at us, or just the wave, with greater ease. Not saying happy, not saying fun, but with grace. We have a focus so much on being supportive of others and put me last. Isn't that right? Because self-care is selfish, that misconception. Yet, and Amanda touched on that too. Taking care of ourselves is self-care, not selfish. The more we care for ourselves, the better able we are able to be there for others who need us, especially ourselves. We can't forget ourselves. I'd like to invite you all to a self-compassion break. This is another very brief practice. If we practice this several times a day, it'll start coming more naturally when we're having moments of judging ourselves. Not only do we have the pain we're going through, but many of us will judge ourselves for that pain. Why can't I just get through this? Or why, whatever it is, whatever we're telling ourselves that's not very friendly. So self-compassion helps us to build that friendliness, which will help support us and build resilience. So I'm going to invite you to bring to mind a small irritating situation, not the major thing that you're suffering with. Small irritating situation. Maybe that's, I don't know, a coworker, doesn't text back, or the person that cut you off today in traffic, or whatever it is. How long and boring, with a class is, or whatever it is. So bring to mind a small, annoying situation. While you're thinking of that irritable issue, annoying, notice the type of thoughts you're having. How is your mind? Notice the emotions you're having. Now we're just allowing and accepting, not trying to change it. Notice body sensation. Is there tension? Whatever is there, we're just allowing. Next, common humanity. So we've just been mindful. We've been investigating our experience with some kindness. Next comes common humanity. Sometimes when we're struggling, we tend to some of us are, we tend to feel isolated. We're like we're struggling on our own. Other people may not understand. Bringing to mind or just thinking the thought that I'm not alone in this. There must be at least 100 or 1,000 other people in the country and the world that are experiencing something like this right now. Whatever it is. I'm not alone. I have people in my life that I care about that care about me. So that's just remembering that there is common humanity. And lastly, the kindness part comes in. This includes physical touch. So if it feels right, perhaps putting the hand on the heart, that's the one I like. You might give yourself a hug. You might just, squeeze your knee or whatever it is. You might place your hands on your cheeks. Some physical touch that expresses some form of affection for yourself. You don't have to do it if it's not comfortable. And some type of wish for yourself. So it might be something like, may I be patient with myself? May I be kind to myself? May I not judge myself so harshly? So some type of wish. If that language doesn't work for you, you can change it. You can change it to, I'm doing the best I can. This is hard. And I'm doing the best I can with that physical touch, if that's appropriate for you. We have come to the end of the self-compassion break. Does anyone want to share anything? Now, you might not feel self-compassion right now. We've planted a seed, but that seed needs to be watered and tended. So unfortunately, we don't have, I was going to say we don't have a pill for that, but when we practice this, practice becomes more comfortable, becomes progress. It becomes more natural. Let me know if anyone wants to share anything in regards to that. Thank you. It's hard. It's hard. Someone said we're just used to moving on rather than feeling. I was at a funeral last week for a family friend, and the people closest to that family friend, they're really focusing on working a lot to avoid. Now, there's nothing wrong with being busy, and busyness can be helpful. But if that's all we're practicing, then we're not healing. We're just pushing it aside. It will still be there because grief is natural. It's a part of the healing process. It's part of loving process. So the encouragement is when we can, you don't have to do it in the deepest, darkest moments, but when we can, when that thought of them pops up, for some of us, if it's recent, you might be about to have called that person or feeling, whenever if you're comfortable taking a moment and noticing that, wow, yeah, this hurts. This is how I feel. This is where I feel it in my body. Being present and honoring that experience in the moment, because it's really deeply connected to love for that person. We're not robots. We can't just shut off the feeling. But yes, it is very challenging. And most people naturally want to avoid pain. And here we're asking you to turn towards it. It's challenging. Yet you can take it in baby steps and turn towards it moment by moment, 1 second this moment, 1 second, in the next hour or the next day. Never pushing yourself either way to get over it or to dive deeply into it. So that's part of honoring ourselves. Resilience, most people will define that as bouncing back. I've heard that a lot when I ask people, what's resilience? They say bouncing back. Yes, it's bouncing back, but not exactly back to where we were before sometimes. with awareness, with compassion, we can bounce back with greater strength, with greater flexibility, with growth. So we're not just coming back to where we were before. Adversity and difficulty can sometimes lead us to greater growth and compassion. The more open we are with our grief to feeling it, the more compassionate we're going to be to other people. You won't just say, come on, get over it. It's been 3 months. You're still crying. It's been 1 year. There is no deadline, right? Okay. You don't get over grief. You move forward with it. Thank you. Loss is inevitable, but mindfulness can help to support the process. Okay. All right. Okay, have my eye on the clock there. You know what? I'm gonna.
Very good.
Okay, yeah, we got about 5 minutes.
1:15.
Okay, perfect. So mindfulness is really about awareness and holding what's here. One of the things I like to share personally, humor. My mom, she wasn't like a jokester, but she had a great sense of humor. And when she passed at the celebration of her life, I was crying and I was a huge mess, but I shared a story about her that made me laugh. Didn't make everybody else laugh. Some of them were like, what? But my mom was very picky lady, very picky lady, very opinionated, very honest. So when she was sick, I said, how about I make a sloppy Joe? If she's a Southern lady from Texas, so I don't know if you guys know what a sloppy Joe is. It's ground meat with barbecue sauce and ketchup, and it's delicious and it's not healthy. But I was like, I'm going to make this healthy because I'm trying to make her better. Onions, peppers, spinach. I put all the stuff in it. When I handed her the plate, she said, and excuse my language, what the shit is this? That was hilarious to me. She's sick. She was not doing well. She was in the last month of her life. And the way she looked at it and had that zest, it was hilarious to me. I always tell that story because it makes me laugh and it makes me remember the fierce person that she was. So I try to remember those, fun, funny moments. Of course, with time that becomes more easy to do. And I share that with other people, even though they think it's weird or morbid. I talk about her as much as I can. I'm going to share a poem with you that I heard recently called Adrift. In that we can allow ourselves to feel humor or beauty or joy. And hopefully we can work with not feeling any guilt about that, because we know that loved one would want us to feel these things and continue living because we are still alive. So this poem reminds me of that, Adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, and the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and that all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I am adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. I'm going to invite all of us to stop. So we're sometimes racing to distract ourselves or just to keep busy. And the encouragement is to pause, to be in the moment. I'll guide you through this practice. Pause or stop whatever you're doing. Take a few moments to notice the sensations of your breathing. Now, if the breath is not comfortable, that's okay. Take a few moments and just notice sounds. Noticing sounds or sensations just as they are. We're accepting, allowing it as it is. O is for observing. So with a kind curiosity, observing your thoughts. Whatever they are. I'm tired. I don't know what I'm thinking. It doesn't matter. You're just observing. There's no right or wrong. Observing emotions. Are there any emotions here right now? Perhaps naming. There's heaviness. There's peace. There's concern, whatever it is. Observing the physical body. How does my body feel right now? Like you're checking in with a good friend and you actually want to hear how they're doing. How is the body? Lastly, proceed with your day. That's the P. The more that we stop throughout the day, just like any of those other brief practices, the more tools we'll have in our toolbox when challenging times come up, boring times, whatever it is, we'll have more capacity to be with ourselves as we are, with compassion. Grief isn't something necessarily to be fixed or solved. It's something that needs to be tended to, something that needs to be nurtured. Oh, I'm sorry about that. What happened to that picture? Sorry about that. Okay. If you're interested in learning more, we offer research-based programs. These are all short courses. We do have the mindfulness-based stress reduction. That's the world-renowned research-based program. But this Saturday, we begin Mindful Body and Mind. It's an abbreviated version of the mindfulness-based stress reduction, learning mindfulness for yourself in a supportive group environment, small group online, and creating your own practice. Mindful self-compassion course, that starts on Monday night. If you know that you're not so kind to yourself, this is a really good one. I'm actually probably going to take it again for myself. Mindful teacher training program, if you want to learn how to bring trauma sensitive, diversity sensitive mindfulness to kids. There's a free Monday practice every Monday, one in English, one in Spanish. And then Mindful Kids Miami is available for workshops, for family sessions, individual retreats, and more. So we have our saying, educating the mind without the heart is no education at all. And if you'd like to contact us, our info is at the bottom. So now we have some time for questions for either myself, I think, or Amanda.
Yeah.
Opening up the space for that. So I just thank you everyone for your attention, for your bravery of being present. And if you ever have any questions, you can please feel free to contact me. I put my name and email in there.
Anyone has any questions that we can answer for you all?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was interested if anybody knows or any programs that are not online, but I have a 5-year-old. My mom passed away 2 years ago, and she was a primary caregiver, and he still has a very difficult time with it. And I keep looking for, programs or things for him. It looks like Miami has a lot, but I live in Broward, so a lot of them I cannot partake in. I'm okay with paying, but I can't find anything in Broward County.
Have you looked at Tomorrow's Rainbow in Broward?
I just did. So
Okay.
he's starting, he did a camp in November, so he's gonna start this month there. But that's the first program that that I found. Thank you.
Yeah, they're excellent, and I recommend them. That's for grief support. Anyone,
Mhm.
they're specifically, if you haven't heard of them, it's equine therapy. So and equine grief support. So that they're wonderful. CBC is expanding our in-person programming too. So if you don't already subscribe to our newsletter, I'm sure Amanda will put that in the chat. I think it was there before, but definitely do that. We've had in-person programming in Broward and Miami-Dade. We're trying to expand more into Palm Beach, and we want to make sure that you're getting that information too.
Yeah, I get the newsletter. Everything has been online, and for a 5-year-old, it's kind of rough too.
Yeah, yeah. We had an event in August in Broward. We're planning another one coming up in the coming months. And I just was on a call with someone this morning. So we hope in 2024 to offer more, and 5-year-olds would be perfect for that audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Any other questions that we can answer for you?
Dorlie, while people are thinking of questions, I want to say thank you to you. That was absolutely wonderful. I'm feeling much more relaxed than I did prior to this.
Yes.
And we are so thrilled that CBC is partnering more and more with Mindful Kids Miami. Thank you from the
Thank you
bottom of
so
my
much.
heart.
Thank you for
Yes.
having me. I
Yes,
appreciate
it was awesome. But and please do ask Dorlie questions in the chat or out loud. We want to encourage you to look into our other programming. CBC will be going through a training in the coming week.
it.
And we're very excited for that, and we want others to partake in it too. So happy that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much. Did you drop everything into the chat as far as your website? I was catching some of it. I want to make sure everything is there so people know how to reach out to you beyond
I
your
can do that. Yeah, I was on that last slide, but I can definitely do it again.
Yeah, it's always helpful. And Amanda put our information there too, but if you're not currently referring to our groups, please make sure that you are. And I'm glad, Jessica, that you're looking at our newsletter. That's awesome. I also want to thank Jessica, you just shared about your loss. Thank you for being open. Dorlie, thank you for being open about your losses and about how mindfulness has helped you. I also will be open. My dad died 3 months ago, also very suddenly. And I will say CBC has helped me get through that loss. And I could not have done that without CBC. I was at our candlelighting ceremony in December, and just such a powerful experience to be around others who've experienced loss. So as we are all helping people in the community, just remember that doesn't make us Superman, woman, person, and that we have to take care of ourselves. And our people often, when we do our presentations, they will say, wait, can I go to your groups? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. You should definitely be able to go to our groups too. Thank you, Dorlie. Amanda, Dorlie, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you so much, Dorlie, for sharing that beautiful presentation. And thank you all for joining us today.